Frigidaire. We introduced the first home freezer, the first pulsator agitator washer, and now we introduce the Frigidaire Orbit Clean dishwasher, designed with a unique wash arm that gives you 4 times more water coverage for a consistently better clean. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Hi, I'm John Mallis, and welcome to this live edition of Connect with Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this Friday morning. Today, we're going to go inside the courtroom of a high-profile case right here in the city of Fresno and talk to one of the acting attorneys who's on the inside. And your questions are very much welcome here at 436-MeTV. Hit option 11. Back with our live program here on Connect with Me on Comcast, channel 187 and 43.6. Well, we've got a couple of high-profile cases right here in the city of Fresno going on at the Fresno County Courthouse right now. Don't know if you've been following any of the action, of course, in the Fresno Bee or on the news, but we're going to be talking about a couple of those cases here on Connect with Me on this day. And one of those cases, I don't know if you followed this from the very beginning. You know, it's kind of hard to follow these cases if you're not really in the courtroom or in the know day in, day out. You read the accounts in the paper and see the accounts on the news, but you're kind of getting a thumbnail sketch for what's really going on inside these cases. Now, one of these cases deals with Spencer Scarber. Let's put his picture up on the screen. You might remember he was convicted in a rape case. He was supposed to be sentenced, I believe, this month, in the month of October. He fled to Mexico, you might recall, was then returned to the U.S. back in February. And his mother, Gail Scarber, she was charged with aiding and abetting her son, as was his father, Kyle, you might recall, who was an assistant chief with the CHP right here in the Central Valley. And you know, Spencer's sister, you can't leave her out, Crystal Reynoso, she was also involved in this case. So you've got a very interesting twist to the Spencer Scarber case. Live in our studio right now is Chuck McGill. He is representing Spencer Scarber. And of course, Chuck is a high-profile attorney here, been practicing many years, since 1989. They say he has a very unorthodox style, of course, in the courtroom, but he has a lot of experience. He has been practicing so long, he's got more than 150, close to 200 jury and courtroom trial cases. He is representing Spencer, so we'll find out. He was in court just a day or two ago. We'll find out exactly what happened. And there is also this issue with going inside the courtroom with your cell phone and tweeting exactly what's going on. Is that causing a problem? Is that a violation of your 6th Amendment, the right to a fair trial? We're not sure about that, but our Chuck McGill is right here in the studio today to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about the Brian Calhoun case and also the social media aspect, as I mentioned, Twitter. How is that affecting court cases in this modern day and age? 436-MeTV, option 11. If you've got a question for our special guest today, Chuck McGill, longtime attorney here in the city of Fresno. Back in just a moment.
Now, why don't you tell us the whole story right from the beginning? All right, from the beginning. This is the city, Los Angeles, California. My name's Friday. I carry a badge. Police officers.
You any idea who the other man was?
My partner's Bill Gannon.
Program?
We got just one big question.
Yeah.
When?
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
I guess I made our guest sound kind of old in the opening. I should have said veteran. You know, veteran sounds good because, you know, long time practicing attorney. It's not like the guy's 85 years old. He just turned 39. Chuck McGill is here. How are you, Chuck?
I'm
good to see
John.
you. How's
Thank
your
you for
family? Your
inviting
wife
me.
is good?
She's doing great. We're just really happy with her recovery and everything that's going on with her.
Yeah, and as we all know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. There's no question about it, and so you see a lot of people wearing the pink ribbons, and so, you know, we wish her a speedy recovery, and she's in remission right now.
She is. She has been clean. She's tested clean for the last year and a half, so we're really excited about the recovery that she's had. And
That's great. And your son's doing well.
He's doing well.
Disappointed the A's lost last night.
We both were distraught. We went to bed at 8 o'clock last night because we just couldn't handle the night.
You know what we all needed is one of those Justin Verlander voodoo dolls.
I was trying.
Just trying to.
I was trying. I was going blah 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 at home, but it just nothing could throw him.
Oh my gosh! So this Spencer Scarber case, this thing won't go away. I mean, it seems like it's going on and on. So he was in court when, yesterday or the day before?
He was in court yesterday. Yeah.
What happened? Give us the lowdown as much as you can.
Okay, we're in the process of doing a motion for new trial because we think that his trial was fundamentally unfair. Because his defense lawyer hadn't subpoenaed any witnesses for the defense. And Spencer testified yesterday that his defense lawyer said, well, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to come in here and say that you raped this lady, but you just didn't remember because you were so loaded. And that wasn't what Spencer was telling him was happening. And as a result of that, I think that the outcome of the case was fundamentally unfair. It explains his conduct. You know, we've got a 19-year-old boy who's never had to deal with a courtroom before. He didn't know where to turn, and so he fled. Wrong decision, but a typical decision of somebody of that age and maturity.
Do you think that the credibility of the witnesses then are in question?
Absolutely. What we've been doing and what we've been trying to show the court, and we're in the right place because Judge Sarkisian is such a bright scholar of the law that I think he can see through the fog of it. But we're trying to show him, look, there are a number of witnesses that should have been called, that if they testified would have...
Why weren't they called? Do you have any idea why?
Well...
By the prosecution now, right?
No, I'm talking about his defense attorney.
His defense attorney.
His defense attorney had subpoenaed witnesses and then released them before...
And before they testified.
Before they testified. And... Gee, I don't really know why he didn't call the witnesses and put on a defense. Now, Spencer left.
He just didn't believe in his client?
Well, now that is a thought that's crossed my mind a number of times.
Yeah.
Is that he just didn't believe in his client's case.
Yeah, and so he kind of threw his hands up in the air.
He kind of threw his hands up in the air and said, look, we're going to approach this and we're going to take a bite of the apple because I don't think we can take the whole apple. So we'll just take bites of that apple for you and take our best shot at it. But this case is so filled with politics and conflict because of who Spencer's dad was, who he was in relation to, the whole concept of
going to Mexico, coming back, all that.
There was politics in play in this case from the very beginning because of his father's connection to law enforcement and to the different agencies.
Yeah, I mean, his father was a veteran CHP guy.
Veteran CHP, made it all the way to the rank of assistant chief, which is one step below commissioner. And so he was as high as you could go in the CHP. He had personal relationships with the district attorney. They'd had an affair years before, and he had support to run against the sheriff. And so there was a lot of politics in play here.
So when you talk about an affair with the district attorney, are you talking about the district attorney I'm thinking of?
Yes, I am.
Elizabeth Egan?
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
that's
And how do you know
very
that
true.
for a fact?
Well, Spencer's dad, Kyle, admitted to that, represented his attorney contacted the DA's office, and when I brought this up at the time that we were retained, the DA responded saying, "Oh, it was a relationship that occurred long ago before either of us were married," and tried to defend that by saying it wasn't that big of a deal. But that's not what we believe.
How is that having an effect on this case, do you think?
I think
I'm not quite sure. Explain the connection. How that affects
Here's how I
this
think
case.
it affects this case. You have the district attorney who has an interest in the outcome of the case because of her relationship with Kyle's father.
Correct.
You have the sheriff, Margaret Mims, who has an interest in the outcome of this case because of her concern that Kyle Scarber's going to run against her for sheriff. And he was starting to talk to people that were going to support him in that campaign that had been supporters of hers. So you have her interest in it. Then you have and then you have Spencer's attorney, who works for the Alternative Public Defender's Office called Chumo and Associates. That office is constantly in communications with the DA's office and the sheriff's office because of the fact that it's a secondary office of alternative defense. So I really don't know if the fact that his attorney worked for the Alternative Defense Office had an impact on how he produced the defense.
So with you, it just doesn't pass the smell test.
It just doesn't pass the smell test. And the reality is this kid has a right to have his whole case vetted out in front of a jury and have a jury hear everything before they make a determination of guilt or innocence.
Now, you hear this all the time. Attorneys say, and I've heard attorneys say this all the time, I'm not interested whether or not I believe my client is innocent or guilty. It's my job to represent them. How do you feel about Spencer Scarber? Do you believe that he is innocent?
I believe this kid really got a raw deal.
Yeah.
And he has been consistent with his statement to me as to what he said occurred from the very beginning.
And you believe him?
And I believe him. There's no reason for me to disbelieve him. He comes from a good family. His parents are good people. They're good, God-fearing, law-abiding people. And the reality of it is, I don't think he had a fair shot.
We all know what a violent and horrible crime rape is. And so when you look into his eyes, you just can't see him committing that kind of a violent act. In my 25 years of defending people, there's a certain look of particular type of criminals. And sex-related criminals have a kind of look in their eye. I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah.
But they've got this kind of hollow look in their eyes. And he doesn't exhibit that. He doesn't look like the type of person that would be perpetrating this type of crime. And there's a feeling you get, in my opinion, from experience dealing with it, that I don't receive from him. And what I see is a very young 21-year-old now. I can imagine very, very young 19-year-old at the time that really has gotten taken for a ride.
Yeah. We're talking with Chuck McGill. He, of course, representing Spencer Scarber in this case, this high-profile case that just seems to go on and on and on. Hey, at some point it's going to end. We'll see how it ends here. I've been following parts of it in the press and the media. We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break and what's fair and what isn't, because some people now are tweeting in the courtroom and want to find out if that is an issue that should be brought up with the judge and should just be banned from the courtroom once and for all. 436-MeTV if you want to join the conversation and ask our friend Chuck McGill a question or two. Back with the show in just a moment.
When you're looking for KitchenAid innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified KitchenAid appliances save you energy and money, and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Back here talking about the case involving Spencer Scarber, and I do want to put his picture up on the screen one more time, if we've got it. Spencer, and you talked about actually the look in his eye, and when you talk to him and look at him up close, does he look at you directly in the eye when he talks, or does he kind of look around or down, or what's your feel about it?
My feel is this is a young man that was raised by good parents, and he's got that kind of attitude. I mean, yeah. He looks at you, he talks with you, he's direct. He doesn't have what you're saying is that kind of look away, not make eye contact when he's making a statement because there's something false about what he's saying. That's not what he's doing.
I want to put his picture up one more time and tell us what his mood is right now.
I'll tell you, his mood right now is different than it was when I first began representing him. And the reason why is his mood when I first met with him was, it was over. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I have no hope, and I have no chance.
Yeah.
And as we've been pursuing the motion for new trial in his case, it's become lighter. He has hope again. He has a belief that he may have an opportunity to have his side heard on the case. And that
he's hopeful that that's going to happen.
He's hopeful it's going to happen. He's hopeful that the politics that have been in play is not going to have as big of an impact on his case that it's had, and he'll have an opportunity to tell his story. And yesterday he did tell part of his story because he testified about what had happened before he was arrested and how his confession was darkened by the fact that he was beaten into confessing by a
Was his confession tainted, in your opinion?
Well, the thing that happened, I think, that really started this whole ball rolling was the folks that he associated with up in the mountains were trying to hide what they had around that location. Mm-hmm. And so they were looking for a patsy to claim that they were the perpetrator of a rape. And they beat him to the point to where he confessed. They told him, you either confess or we're going to kill you. And he believed them. And we're going to kill your family. And he believed that too. And so when he was giving his confession to law enforcement, they didn't do anything to force that confession out of him. Law enforcement didn't. But in the back of his mind, he realized, if I don't confess, they're going to kill me and they're going to kill my family. And he knew that those people were capable of it. And yesterday during the hearing, one of the witnesses that hadn't been subpoenaed testified that she believed, yes, those people are capable of killing people. They've bragged about killing people. They've bragged about beating Spencer into making a statement.
And she's one of the witnesses that was not allowed to testify.
One of the witnesses that didn't testify at trial.
Did not testify.
Was not found by his defense attorney.
And she claims that his life was in danger.
She believed.
And his family.
She was told by people that perpetrated the beating on him. They admitted and laughed about beating him into making a statement.
A forced confession.
A forced confession. And that she said they had, and on previous occasions, had admitted about killing other people. She was scared to death. She wept as she testified because she was so afraid of what was going to happen to her as to her statement.
All right, talk to us about this tweeting in the courtroom now. A lot of people, I guess journalists, are doing it that are covering court cases. I know that when you walk through the metal detectors to get inside the courthouse, they say, hey, you got to turn your cell phone off. Mm-hmm. I thought cell phones were allowed in court, but you couldn't turn them on.
Well, you know, the issue of tweeting is a very interesting one, and I think it has a lot to do with the reporter that's covering this case for Channel 30, Corin Hoggart.
Okay.
Corin Hoggart has put himself in the middle of this case. He at some point in the earlier trial, he was going through the garbage of his parents just to see if he could find anything to support the theory that the parents were somehow involved with Spencer's absconding. He's got himself embroiled in this whole case.
Corin, you're claiming that Corin actually went through the garbage.
Oh, he'll admit to you.
Okay.
He's admitted to me that he went through their garbage to see if he could discover things that he could use to report on about the family. He's become so embroiled in this case that he said he's received death threats over Facebook from people because of his attack on the Scarborough family. He's embroiled, and so he's made it no qualms that he has an interest in the outcome of this case. Well, he was sitting in court while we excluded witnesses, and the idea behind that is so the witnesses aren't tainted by the testimony of other witnesses. That's in a long time history of the courts doing that when you hold a hearing or you have a motion.
It's your right to fair trial.
Right. You don't want the witnesses to hear what other witnesses say and then come back and parrot what they said or change their testimony because of what they said. So you exclude witnesses from the courtroom with the intent that they don't hear what's going on.
So was he tweeting yesterday?
He was tweeting during the hearing. He was tweeting things that Spencer testified to. He tweeted what the other witness testified to. And in fact, what happened is we had two witnesses. One we believe that was involved in Spencer's beating had been subpoenaed. They were there in the courtroom in the morning. They were excluded in the mid-morning. And while Corin Hoggart was tweeting what Spencer was testifying to, one of the witnesses retweeted what Corin said, so they knew what he was tweeting, and they both left. They both just left the courtroom. When we came back, or after the testimony before lunch, I advised the court that 2 of my witnesses who'd been subpoenaed had arrived at court, had left. In the afternoon...
They had left based on the tweets?
I believe they left based upon the tweets because they heard about what was going on. They knew the focus of the investigation was going to be on them.
So that directly affects your case?
Absolutely, it directly affects my case because here we have 2 other witnesses that could lend corroboration to the testimony of my client about being beaten into making a false confession.
Can they be forced back to court to testify if you got a subpoena?
Well, they can be. The court can issue a body attachment and have them arrested and brought back to court, but we have a short time frame for filing our motion for new trial at this point, and the reality is the court didn't issue a body attachment because he said, look, you don't have the time to have them brought back in. How do we know they're going to show up? So I'm going to be deprived. My client's going to be deprived of their testimony because of what Warren was doing in court, and he knew it.
So do you think that this final question before we go to break? Do you think that this tweeting directly violates the 6th Amendment or right to fair trial?
Clearly.
In any case.
In this circumstance.
Not only in yours.
In this circumstances, this is a perfect example of why it shouldn't happen, because it clearly violated my client's right to fair trial.
And you filed a brief in court regarding this this morning?
We did file a brief with the court asking the court to reconsider his denial of the motion to compel witnesses to testify. But it did. And in that note, a number of judges recognize that social media is a problem for the courts now. And so what they do is they order everyone that comes in the courtroom, turn off your cell phones. You're not to be using your cell phones during court.
Not even the media.
Not even it's a blanket rule, and the reason why it's a blanket rule, so it's not subjected in the media to specific exclusion. But the reality of it is, the court system is catching up with the fact that the social media is now impacting the fairness of a trial.
Right.
And what happened here is Warren took advantage of the fact that this particular judge didn't do that prior to the hearing. And I think that's very sad.
All right, we're talking with Chuck McGill, a veteran attorney here representing Spencer Scarber, talking about tweeting and social media and how it affects court cases, not only here in the city of Fresno, but probably all up and down the state of California. You may see the changes in the law here pretty soon regarding this because, in the old days, reporters would go in with their notebooks, take a few notes, and boom, you wouldn't hear about the case until the next day when you read about it in the paper. But now you're getting a blow-by-blow account as it is happening. It's like having court cameras in the courtroom.
Right.
That's debatable too for some attorneys and some clients. Back with more here on Connect with Me, 436 MeTV, option 11.
1 Adam 12.
This is Adam 12. It stars Martin Milner as Officer Pete Malloy, Kent McCord as Officer Jim Reed.
1 Adam 12, roger.
This black and white patrol car has an overhead valve V8 engine. It develops 325 horsepower at 4,800 RPMs. It accelerates from 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. It has a top speed of 120 miles an hour. The automobile has 2 shotgun racks, one attached to the bottom portion of the front seat, one in the vehicle trunk.
You want me to drive?
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
We're back here with Chuck McGill, of course, representing, Spencer Scarber, a case that has been in the media for quite some time. We're talking about tweeting, and you think there'll be any changes regarding social media and the court? Now, but let me ask you this. Is tweeting any different than having an actual camera in the courtroom to record something live?
Is it different?
How different is it in your judgment?
I was reviewing his tweets, and someone tweeted to him, "Wow, this is better than having a camera in the courtroom because
really?
We're getting your immediate impact on what's going on."
Yeah.
And so we're getting your opinion of what's going on.
But if you're tweeting, you might be slanting something to fit your vision of what's happening, as opposed to a camera being there and everybody can see it and they can form their own judgment.
Well, clearly, that's exactly what's happening, because when he's tweeting from his perspective.
Right.
And we know he's got a perspective that's anti-Scarber, and so everything he's going to lay out there are things that make Spencer look guilty.
But when the camera is there, everybody that's watching it at home, live, let's say it's on CNN, for example, everybody's forming their own judgment about what's happening.
Right, and they're reacting to it as it's happening.
Right.
And in a sense, that's probably more fair than a tweet is.
Yeah.
Because a tweet, you're going to get the bias of the person that's tweeting.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, I believe that we're going to see laws that make it so that you cannot have a phone active in the courtroom to protect the defendant's right to fair trial.
Right. All right. I know Roger Nuttall is representing Brian Calhoun in the Brian Calhoun case versus the student, Kevin Gomez, and we all know what happened there at Fresno City College. And there is Brian Calhoun right there, long-time professor at Fresno City College. He was a supervisor in the state of Wisconsin, but when he came here, he ran for city council. He actually won 2 terms. He's a former Fresno city councilman, and Brian Calhoun now fighting for his political and, I don't know, political, but certainly his reputation in court. He's got misdemeanor battery charges against him right now. And so what really happened here, and what's going on, Chuck?
You know, I went just to foray back to what we were talking about tweeting. Judge Denise Whitehead has made it a rule in her courtroom and she tells everyone, turn off your phones when you come into my courtroom. There's no tweeting, no Facebooking.
She said that.
She said that in this case. And so what happened in my trial yesterday isn't happening in her court. There isn't any instant tweeting that's going on during Calhoun's trial, and I think that's fair.
What did Calhoun do wrong, in your opinion? He fought back.
In my opinion, what he did wrong was he overreacted.
Yeah.
To me, it seems
he went over the top.
You know, there's that doctrine of fighting words, and clearly from what I've read, she said what would be considered fighting words to him. But
did she strike him first, or did he strike her first?
My understanding of the evidence, and I'm not the attorney on it.
No, I know.
My understanding of the evidence of it is that he grabbed her, asking her to identify herself after she had cussed at him.
Yeah.
And after he grabbed her, then she struck him a number of times.
Right.
And then he picked her up and threw her.
Yeah, picked her up and threw her against the wall,
right,
from what I understand, from what I read in the paper. So, I mean, if you were the defense attorney on this one, how would you handle it? What would you be telling or instructing Brian Calhoun to do at this point?
Not talk while witnesses are on the stand. I'm afraid if that happened to me,
did you read that in the paper? Why is he doing that?
We'd have a little chat after that, because that's just terrible from the perspective of the jury that's sitting there. If he's mumbling loud enough for the court to hear,
that's something you see on television, isn't it? And like a Perry Mason episode or something.
Sometimes it's just hard to keep the cap on people. You know, they just can't help themselves, and I would be concerned that conduct gave more credibility to the young lady than her testimony itself.
It may have. It may have. I mean, so what happens to Calhoun now? What's your prediction on what's going to happen here? This is a very interesting case, and many people view Calhoun as kind of a character that's kind of way out there, you know. Anyway,
it is an interesting case, and I can see it going both ways. And when you can see, I mean, I can see the defense side of this. She was in a Chicano Latino studies class, and the classmates that were in there taking a midterm, so Calhoun's interruption would be a really big interruption for them because it's their in midterm semester grades. And so I could see them all getting upset with him. And the defense's theory is that he was surrounded by students who were angry, and this one was the one that spoke out the most. So I could see a defense theory that it was self-defense. But in the same token, this was a small young lady, and he's a pretty big guy.
Yeah.
And when you stand them up to one another, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to get a lot of sympathy from a jury because he was concerned about the class's activity.
Yeah, it's not like he was concerned about his safety.
No, and I think it's a tough case for a defendant.
You think he gets his job back? Tough
I think
one,
it's a tough case for the defense.
Tough one.
He's got a great lawyer, though. I love Roger.
Oh, Roger Nuttall's another now
You can
forever.
say he's old attorney.
He's an old attorney?
That's
okay.
right.
Well, you said that, not me.
Roger would admit that he's been in the fields for at least 50 years fighting.
We got about a minute or 30 seconds left. In your opinion, you've been practicing since, what, 89? You've been in court for so many of these trials and cases. In 30 seconds, can you tell us what has changed? The biggest thing that has changed since 1989 when you first went into the courtroom, walked in and defended your first case or whatever?
Oh, that's a tough one. I believe the way courts have now become a television program, live TV.
Yeah.
I think the
it's
live
a media event, isn't it?
I think the live TV began with O.J. Simpson, and then you had all those real life television programs. And I think the courtrooms have now become kind of a live television thing. And when
it's like a soap opera.
It's like a soap opera, and I don't think that really serves justice. I don't think it really serves a defendant to get a chance for a fair trial. I think the reality of it is a jury should hear only the evidence that's allowed and not consider anything else.
Chuck, sadly we're out of time,
Thanks,
but
John.
always good to see
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Hey, go A's next year.
That's what we're waiting for next year, aren't we?
And give your best to your wife.
I sure
our
will.
Best, of course, and to your son.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to talk more with Chuck McGill as this case goes on. That's going to do it for us today here on Connect With Me. Our thanks to our friend Chuck McGill, and the best, obviously, to his wife. And we're going to be back on Monday with a tape program with George Hostetter from the Fresno Bee. Have a great weekend, everybody.